General Maya Santos stood on the observation deck of Europa Station, watching as construction drones swarmed around the massive hull of the dreadnought Harbinger. The shipyard, hidden beneath the icy surface of Jupiter's moon, had been operational for 15 years now, completely unknown to their alien neighbors. Our latest estimates show the Stellar Assembly still believes we're focusing our industrial capacity on civilian infrastructure, Lieutenant Kiran Patel reported, sliding a data tablet across the conference table. Their monitoring satellites continue to observe our decoy projects on Mars. Santos nodded, her expression unchanged. And our actual military production capacity. We've exceeded projections by 17% this quarter. The reactor innovations from Dr. Chen's team have allowed us to increase power output while maintaining the stealth signature. Outside the reinforced viewport, the Harbinger represented just one of 30 capital ships nearing completion. Each vessel incorporated weapons systems that would have been considered theoretical impossibilities by assembly standards. The assembly races had evolved past warfare, dedicating their scientific advancement to peaceful exploration and ecological management. A noble goal, but one that left them dangerously unprepared. The Centauri ambassador requested another tour of our research facilities next month, Santos said, turning from the window. Make sure the Jupiter shipyards remain on communications blackout during their visit. Route everything through the civilian channels. Earth's strategy had been consistent since first contact. Present humanity as an eager, somewhat primitive species focused on cultural exchange and scientific learning. Meanwhile, the Unified Command transferred 80% of Earth's military budget into projects hidden throughout the solar system. Assembly representatives interpreted human wariness as cultural growing pains rather than strategic planning. The latest intelligence reports from the Outer Rim are concerning, Patel added, bringing up a holographic display showing movement patterns along the borders of assembly space. Unknown vessels have been detected performing scanning operations at 3 different outposts. The Assembly Science Council dismissed them as sensor anomalies. Santos knew better. 20 years of carefully analyzing assembly communications had revealed a dangerous pattern. The older spacefaring races had become complacent. They hadn't faced a serious threat in generations and had recategorized basic security as an evolutionary relic of their more primitive past. Maintain our current construction schedule, Santos ordered, but accelerate the training rotations for battle group commanders. I want all ships fully crewed within 6 months, not 12. As she dismissed her officers, Santos took one last look at the massive warships taking shape below. Humanity had hoped that the assembly was right, that the galaxy had indeed moved beyond armed conflict. But 5,000 years of human history had taught them to prepare for the alternative. The secret fleet represented a promise. Earth would not be caught unprepared when the stars went to war. And war, Santos suspected as she studied the intelligence reports, was coming sooner than anyone in the assembly could imagine. Captain Elijah Chen watched through the viewport as the Tauri orbital station disintegrated under concentrated energy fire. His ship, the Artemis, maintained its civilian broadcast signature while passive sensors recorded everything. The Vraxian vessels moved with predatory precision, systematically eliminating communication arrays before targeting life support systems. Their attack pattern shows remarkable efficiency, Lieutenant Commander Hana Nakamura observed quietly. They'd done this before. Chen nodded grimly. The Vraxians had emerged from the Galactic Rim 3 weeks ago, their massive hibernation ships awakening after their 1,000-year slumber. The Stellar Assembly had initially welcomed them as returning members of the galactic community until the attacks began. Are we maintaining our diplomatic cover? Chen asked, though he already knew the answer. The Artemis appeared on all scans as a standard human diplomatic vessel, unarmed, unthreatening, and present only to facilitate cultural exchange. Yes, sir. The Vraxians are broadcasting requests for our immediate departure from the system. They're citing neutrality protocols and offering safe passage. Chen almost laughed at the irony. The Vraxians believed they were showing mercy to a defenseless species that posed no threat. Below deck, the Artemis carried enough firepower to destroy half the attacking fleet, but revealing that capability now would sacrifice humanity's greatest advantage. Surprise. Transmit the standard humanitarian response. Express our deep concern and request permission to evacuate survivors. Chen turned to his communications officer. Meanwhile, compress all battle data and send it through Quantum Channel 8. Full encryption protocol. The officer nodded, understanding the significance. Quantum Channel 8 didn't officially exist according to Earth's technology disclosure to the Assembly. While transmitting their public message of concern and offers of medical assistance, the Artemis was simultaneously relaying detailed tactical information on Vraxian weapon capabilities, shield frequencies, and battle formations directly to Jupiter Command. On the main view screen, a Vraxian commander appeared, its segmented exoskeleton gleaming under the ship's lights. Human vessel, your presence is acknowledged. You may collect survivors for 12 standard units, then depart. Interference will not be tolerated. Chen bowed respectfully, the picture of diplomatic deference. We are grateful for your mercy. We seek only to help those in need. As the communication ended, Chen turned to his executive officer. Deploy rescue shuttles immediately, and make sure they record everything. The attack on Tori Station had killed over 3,000 Assembly citizens. The Vraxians had targeted the station specifically because it housed the sector's primary scientific research hub, eliminating the Assembly's intellectual resources first. Sir, his tactical officer reported quietly, we're detecting similar attack patterns at 7 other Assembly facilities. It's a coordinated offensive. Chen's expression remained neutral, but inwardly he felt a grim certainty. The moment humanity had prepared for was arriving. As the Artemis conducted its rescue operations under Vraxian supervision, encrypted messages flashed across the solar system. Throughout human space, hidden compartments on civilian vessels opened to reveal weapon systems. Training simulations transitioned to battle preparations. The galaxy was about to learn that appearances could be deceiving, and humanity had been deceiving everyone since the day they reached the stars. Ambassador Sophia Lin sat perfectly still as the Stellar Assembly's Emergency Council descended into chaos. Representatives from 17 species talked over one another, their translation devices creating a cacophony of overlapping voices. Holographic displays showed Vraxian ships advancing through 3 different sectors, methodically destroying everything in their path. We must establish evacuation corridors immediately, the Novalian delegate insisted, their luminescent appendages flashing with distress patterns. Our civilian transports need safe passage to the inner systems. The Zentari representative, an ancient being who rarely spoke at council meetings, raised all 4 of his hands for attention. The historical archives indicate the Vraxians hibernate until resources in their territory are depleted. They seek not conquest but consumption. Negotiation is impossible. Lin had listened for hours as the Assembly delegates proposed and rejected increasingly desperate measures. Not once had they suggested mounting an actual defense. Their civilization had evolved beyond warfare so completely that they could barely conceptualize it as an option. The human delegation has been quiet, observed the Makari chairperson, turning crystalline eyes toward Lin. Perhaps your species, with its unique developmental history, might offer perspective. The subtle condescension wasn't lost on Lin. Since joining the Assembly, humans had been regarded as fascinating primitives, their history of internal conflict viewed as an evolutionary stage the advanced species had outgrown centuries ago. Lin stood, straightening her simple diplomatic attire. The Earth Union has been monitoring the situation closely. We have already dispatched ships to assist with evacuations. Most generous, the Makari chairperson responded, though your limited vessel capacity will. I wasn't finished. Lin interrupted, something rarely done in Assembly protocol. Human warships are being deployed to all threatened sectors. The Jupiter fleet will engage Vraxian forces within 26 hours. Silence fell across the chamber so completely that Lin could hear the soft hum of the environmental systems. Warships. The Novalian's translator struggled with the term. "You mean research vessels retrofitted with defensive capabilities?" "No," Lin replied simply. "I mean warships. Vessels designed and built specifically for combat operations. The Jupiter fleet comprises 28 capital ships and their support vessels." The chamber erupted again, this time with questions directed solely at Lin. How could humans have constructed such a fleet without detection? Why would they conceal their capabilities from their assembly partners? What possible justification could there be for maintaining weapons of war during peacetime? Lin raised a hand for silence. Since humanity's first interstellar journey, we recognized a fundamental truth that the assembly had forgotten. Peace is not the natural state of the universe. It must be protected. 3,000 kilometers away, beneath Europa's icy surface, massive hangar doors slid open. The dreadnought Thunderchild emerged, its massive hull bristling with weapon systems that assembly scientists had deemed theoretically impossible. Behind it, 9 more warships moved into formation. Throughout human space, merchant vessels and research outposts transformed as hidden compartments opened and weapon systems came online. Transport ships revealed themselves as troop carriers. Mining platforms converted to defense installations. Captain Chen, now aboard the command vessel, received the final authorization code from Earth. Operation Sentinel was now active. Humanity's mask of peaceful cooperation fell away, revealing the face of a species that had never forgotten how to fight. The Vraxian battle group emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Sol system, 15 vessels arranged in their characteristic hunting formation. Their intelligence suggested Earth would be minimally defended, a primitive world only recently capable of interstellar travel. Commander Vexkar studied the sensor readings with growing confusion. "Magnify that orbital structure," he ordered, his segmented limb pointing to an anomalous reading near Earth's moon. What had appeared as a standard communication relay suddenly shifted configuration. Panels rotated, revealing weapon ports that had been perfectly camouflaged. Throughout Earth orbit, similar transformations occurred as dozens of supposedly civilian installations revealed their true nature. Alert status. Deploy defensive screens. Vexkar commanded, but the warning came too late. The first volley from Earth's orbital defense grid struck with devastating precision. 3 Vraxian vessels were disabled before they could raise shields, their propulsion systems targeted with surgical accuracy. "Impossible," Vexkar hissed. "Their technology is classified as pre-militarization. This cannot." Multiple contacts emerging from Mars' orbital zone, his sensor officer interrupted. "Additional contacts rising from Earth's atmosphere. We are surrounded." The human vessels appeared nothing like the civilian ships the Vraxians had encountered at assembly outposts. These were angular, purpose-built warships with weapon systems prominently displayed. No pretense of peaceful exploration. No compromise between scientific research and defense capabilities. Every aspect of their design served a single purpose: combat effectiveness. Admiral Sandra Wallace watched from the bridge of the Relentless as her battle group executed the carefully planned ambush. "Status of stealth systems," she asked her tactical officer. "Operating at optimal capacity, Admiral. Our approach was undetected until we initiated weapons lock." The human fleet moved with coordinated precision that shocked the Vraxian commanders. While assembly vessels typically maintained distance from potential threats, human ships accelerated directly toward the Vraxian formation, executing complex evasive patterns while maintaining overlapping fields of fire. "They're attempting to establish a hyperspace exit vector," Wallace's executive officer reported. "Trying to retreat." "Deploy gravity anchors," Wallace ordered calmly. "Keep them here." Throughout the battle space, specialized human vessels activated systems that distorted local spacetime, preventing the Vraxian ships from establishing the stable conditions necessary for hyperspace jumps. It was technology the humans had never shared with the assembly, developed specifically to counter the Vraxian ability to retreat and regroup. On his flagship, Commander Vexkar watched with growing horror as his escape routes disappeared. How can they predict our maneuvers? Every counter-strategy we implement is anticipated before execution. The answer, had he known it, would have terrified him even more. Human battle computers weren't simply advanced algorithms. They contained 5 centuries of warfare simulations. While assembly species focused on mathematical efficiency in their computer systems, humans had prioritized unpredictability and adaptive response. Within 40 minutes, the Vraxian fleet was in ruins. 7 vessels destroyed, 6 disabled, and boarded by human marine units, and only 2 escaped by sacrificing their companion ships. As the battle concluded, Admiral Wallace opened a channel to Earth Command. First engagement complete. Minimal casualties on our side. We've captured significant Vraxian technology intact for analysis. The response came from General Santos herself. Well done, Admiral. But this was merely their scouting force. Prepare your fleet. The real battle is coming. Throughout the solar system, human warships moved into defensive formations, ready to demonstrate that humanity's deception had been its greatest weapon of all. The Zentari ambassador's normally impassive face couldn't hide his shock as he toured Jupiter Command. Massive holographic displays showed human battle groups deploying throughout assembly space, engaging Vraxian forces at critical junctures. What astounded him wasn't merely the existence of these warships, but their obvious sophistication. Your vessel designs appear to incorporate technologies we believed were still theoretical, he observed as Admiral Katori led the assembly delegation through the Strategic Command Center. Necessity drives innovation, Katori replied simply. Earth's history taught us to prepare for worst-case scenarios. The delegation, representatives from 7 assembly species, had arrived expecting to find primitive defenses hastily assembled from civilian technology. Instead, they discovered a military infrastructure that had clearly been developing for decades. The implications were simultaneously reassuring and disturbing. How could you conceal this level of military development? Asked the Novalian delegate, bioluminescent patterns flickering with agitation. Our cooperation agreements included full technological disclosure. Katori's expression remained neutral. Those agreements had specific exceptions for classified defense systems. We disclosed everything required by the letter of those agreements. The unspoken truth hung heavily in the air. Humans had exploited the Assembly's naive legal framework, finding loopholes that allowed them to maintain military secrecy while technically adhering to disclosure requirements. In a separate section of the command center, Captain Chen led a different type of meeting. Assembly engineers crowded around a holographic display showing the modular weapon systems designed for retrofitting civilian vessels. Your ships prioritize efficiency and sustainability, Chen explained, which creates predictable power distribution patterns. Vraxian targeting systems exploit this predictability. He highlighted specific modifications designed to introduce controlled energy fluctuations. These adaptations create false targeting solutions, causing Vraxian weapons to miss their critical strike points. The engineers absorbed the information with growing unease. One Makari engineer finally voiced what many were thinking. These principles violate our core design philosophies. We create technology to function optimally, not deceptively. Chen nodded understanding. In warfare, optimal function sometimes means deliberate imperfection. Unpredictability becomes an advantage. The cultural divide was becoming increasingly apparent. Assembly species had evolved toward cooperation so completely that concepts like strategic deception felt morally uncomfortable. The very idea of designing technology to mislead rather than perform with maximum efficiency challenged their foundational worldview. Meanwhile, in the analysis wing, Vraxian technology captured during the first engagement underwent thorough examination. Dr. Eliza Sharma studied biological samples from captured Vraxian crew members, making a discovery that would transform the conflict. Admiral, she reported, connecting to Katori's secure channel, the Vraxians aren't simply warrior-minded. Their neurology shows evidence of extensive bioengineering. Their aggression isn't cultural, it's hardwired. Across the room, intelligence analysts pored through historical archives, recovered from a damaged Vraxian vessel. The fragments painted a disturbing picture. The Vraxians didn't hibernate by choice. Their 1,000-year sleep cycles were programmed into them by creators long vanished from the galaxy. As this information spread through human command structures, a strategic shift began. What had started as a defensive war might require a different approach. Captain Chen, reviewing the findings with his newly formed mixed-species tactical team, articulated the changing perspective. "We're not fighting an enemy," he explained to the assembly trainees watching him with varied expressions of wonder and discomfort. "We're fighting a weapon that doesn't know it's a weapon." The assembly representatives began to understand the true value of humanity's deception. It wasn't just warships the humans had developed in secret. It was an entirely different way of thinking. Captain Chen stood on the bridge of the Artemis, now revealed as a heavy cruiser rather than the diplomatic vessel it had pretended to be for years. Around him, a mixed crew of humans and assembly species monitored battle stations as the coalition fleet approached Proxima Station. Graxian Battle Group detected, reported his Novalian sensor officer, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing with nervous energy. 23 capital ships, formation consistent with their extinction protocols. The stakes couldn't be higher. Proxima Station served as the primary supply hub connecting Earth to assembly space. If it fell, the Coalition's logistics network would shatter, leaving dozens of worlds vulnerable. "All vessels, assume formation Delta," Chen ordered, his voice calm despite the tension. "Implementing Thermopylae Protocol." Throughout the Coalition fleet, human captains acknowledged while their assembly counterparts hesitated. The battle plan violated every principle of conventional space combat, as understood by assembly tacticians. It called for deliberate vulnerability, creating weaknesses for the enemy to exploit, only to transform those weaknesses into traps. "Captain," his Zentari executive officer said quietly, "the assembly vessels are expressing concerns about their assigned positions. They believe you're placing them in unnecessary danger." Chen nodded. "Open a channel to all coalition ships." On screens throughout the fleet, Chen's face appeared. "To my assembly colleagues, what we're about to execute may seem counterintuitive. You've been trained to minimize risk and maximize efficiency. Today, we're deliberately creating risk to achieve victory. Trust the simulations. Trust your human advisors." The Vraxian fleet accelerated toward them, weapons charging. Their formation was flawless, optimized through thousands of campaigns across millennia. "They're targeting our apparent weak points exactly as predicted," the tactical officer reported. Central Coalition vessels showing simulated power fluctuations. Chen watched as the Vraxians committed to their attack vector, focusing their firepower on what seemed to be vulnerable Coalition ships struggling with power management issues. What the Vraxians couldn't know was that these fluctuations were entirely deliberate, elaborate deceptions created by human engineers. "Execute Phase 2, Chen ordered. The trap closed. Coalition ships that appeared damaged suddenly restored full power, weapons firing from unexpected angles. Meanwhile, smaller vessels that had been hidden in the sensor shadows of larger ships broke formation, attacking Vraxian engines and communication arrays. In the command center of the lead Vraxian vessel, Commander Dirax watched in confusion as his carefully calculated attack dissolved into chaos. The human vessels moved with no discernible pattern, violating basic principles of formation integrity. They sacrificed optimal firing positions to achieve unpredictable approach vectors. The Artemis took a direct hit midway through the battle, losing its primary weapons array and suffering hull breaches across 3 decks. "Damage report," Chen demanded, steadying himself as the ship trembled. "Life support compromised on decks 4 through 7. Main reactor operating at 60% capacity. Primary weapons offline." Any assembly captain would have retreated immediately, preserving their vessel rather than risking complete destruction. Chen had different ideas. Divert all remaining power to engines and forward shields. Set course directly for the Vraxian command ship. The Artemis accelerated toward the massive enemy vessel, a move so apparently suicidal that Vraxian tacticians failed to recognize it as an attack until too late. They had no cultural context for self-sacrifice as a tactical choice. "All hands, prepare for controlled impact," Chen announced, his voice steady as the distance closed. "Collision protocols active." The Artemis struck the Vraxian flagship at precisely the coordinates Chen had specified, its reinforced prow penetrating the enemy's shield harmonics at the exact frequency needed to create catastrophic resonance. Neither vessel would survive the encounter, but as evacuation pods launched from the Artemis, the Vraxian command network collapsed. Without centralized coordination, their perfect formation disintegrated into individual ships fighting alone, precisely the scenario human tacticians had planned for. The Battle of Proxima Station would enter history as the turning point of the war, and the moment when the galaxy learned what humans had always known. Sometimes victory requires sacrifice. Admiral Katori stood before the Coalition War Council, her expression grave as she outlined the final offensive. The holographic display showed the Vraxian home system, 7 planets orbiting a dying star, their surfaces scarred by massive industrial complexes. "Our intelligence suggests their central command structure is located on the 3rd planet," she explained, highlighting a heavily fortified installation. All Vraxian activities throughout the galaxy appeared to be coordinated from this location. The assembly representatives shifted uncomfortably. After months of defensive operations, the prospect of invading the Vraxian home system troubled many of them. The Novalian delegate raised a luminescent appendage. "Is containment not a viable alternative? We could establish a permanent blockade, preventing further expansion without direct confrontation." Katori shook her head. The Vraxians hibernate for centuries between expansion phases. Any containment strategy would eventually fail as future generations forgot the threat. She gestured to human history archives. "Our own past demonstrates how quickly societies forget existential dangers once they appear to subside." The Coalition fleet approached Vraxian space cautiously, expecting fierce resistance. Instead, they encountered scattered patrols easily neutralized by advance forces. Something was wrong. In the lead science vessel, Dr. Sharma analyzed unusual energy readings emanating from the 3rd planet. "These patterns don't match any known Vraxian technology," she reported to General Santos. "They're more complex, almost organic in nature." Lieutenant Chen, promoted after surviving the destruction of the Artemis, led a specialized reconnaissance team to investigate. Their stealth shuttle penetrated the planetary defense grid during a calculated sensor gap, landing near a massive structure unlike any Vraxian architecture encountered previously. "We're detecting unusual radiation signatures," reported his Zentari science officer, adjusting their environmental suit. "Similar to quantum computing processes, but on a biological scale." Inside the structure, Chen's team discovered the truth that would transform their understanding of the conflict. The Vraxians weren't the masters of their empire, they were its servants. At the center of the facility, a massive biological computer pulsed with energy, connected to thousands of Vraxian drones through neural interfaces. "It's some kind of control system," Chen observed, scanning the alien technology. "These readouts suggest it's been operating for over 20,000 years." Dr. Sharma, analyzing the data transmitted from Chen's team, reached a stunning conclusion. The Vraxians are biological constructs, weapons created by an ancient civilization. This system activates them periodically to harvest resources from developing worlds before returning them to hibernation. The evidence was undeniable. Each Vraxian awakening cycle corresponded with resource depletion in their controlled territory. They weren't conquerors by choice. They were programmed harvesters designed to sustain the mysterious biological computer. The real question, Chen transmitted to Coalition Command, is what is this system designed to sustain? What purpose justifies 20 millennia of programmed conquest? Their answer came when Chen's team discovered a sealed chamber at the facility's core. Ancient security systems, far more advanced than anything the Vraxians possessed, guarded whatever lay within. After careful analysis, human engineers identified a method to bypass the defenses. The chamber contained no weapons or treasures. Instead, they found thousands of stasis pods, each containing the preserved form of a species completely unknown to galactic records. Life signs were minimal but present, suspended animation maintained for what appeared to be thousands of years. "They're survivors," Dr. Sharma whispered, examining the data. "The Vraxians aren't weapons of conquest. They're caretakers, programmed to collect resources to maintain this preservation system." The revelation transformed the Coalition's mission from destruction to intervention. The ancient civilization had created the Vraxians as guardians for their survival program. But over the millennia, programming corruption had turned resource collection into systemic devastation. "We're not facing an enemy," Chen reported as his team continued exploring the facility. "We're facing a malfunctioning preservation protocol that's forgotten its original purpose." The greatest threat to the galaxy wasn't Vraxian malice, but the unintended consequences of an ancient species' desperate attempt to survive extinction. 6 months after the discovery of the ancient preservation facility, Captain Chen addressed the first graduating class of the newly formed Galactic Defense Academy. The auditorium contained cadets from 23 species, including reformed Vraxians, whose neural programming had been carefully modified by human and assembly scientists working together. "Today marks not just your graduation," Chen began, looking across the diverse faces before him, "but the beginning of a new approach to galactic security, one built neither on pacifism nor aggression, but on vigilant preparation." In orbit above, vessels of human design now patrolled alongside ships bearing assembly insignia. The once hidden Jupiter fleet had become the template for a combined defense force incorporating technologies and philosophies from multiple civilizations. The ancient civilization whose preservation program created the Vraxian conflict made a critical error, Chen continued. They built a system designed to protect their people, but failed to implement proper oversight. They created guardians without conscience, protectors without perspective. The first awakened survivors of that ancient species, now called the progenitors, worked with coalition scientists to understand what had gone wrong. Their civilization had faced extinction from an expanding stellar event, placing their remaining population in stasis, while the Vraxians gathered resources to sustain them. Over thousands of years, damaged code had transformed resource collection into systematic conquest. Humanity concealed its warships because we understood something our assembly friends had forgotten, Chen explained to the cadets. Peace is not the default state of existence. It must be cultivated, protected, and sometimes, regrettably, enforced. In the diplomatic wing of Proxima Station, now rebuilt after the battle that nearly destroyed it, Ambassador Lin participated in a very different kind of meeting. Assembly representatives who had once regarded humans with patronizing tolerance now sought their counsel on security matters. The balance had shifted. The human approach to deception troubled many of us, admitted the Centauri delegate, but we now recognize it stemmed from caution rather than malice. You prepared for threats we had dismissed as evolutionary relics. Lin nodded acknowledgement. Our history gave us perspective you lacked. We emerged from centuries of internal conflict, making us acutely aware of security vulnerabilities. Across the galaxy, joint human assembly teams work to identify and correct other ancient autonomous systems that might pose similar threats. The progenitor preservation program wasn't the only dormant technology left by vanished civilizations. On Earth, General Santos reviewed construction plans for a new type of vessel, neither purely military nor entirely peaceful. These ships would carry scientific laboratories alongside defense systems, exploration equipment beside tactical sensors. They represented the synthesis of human caution with assembly optimism. The protective isolation phase has ended, she told her officers. Now we build for collaborative security. Meanwhile, Dr. Sharma led the effort to rehabilitate the Vraxians, helping them develop beyond their programmed parameters. Many chose to join the Defense Academy, their intrinsic tactical abilities now directed toward protection rather than conquest. As his graduation address concluded, Captain Chen gestured toward the viewport, where Earth was visible as a distant blue point of light. When human warships first revealed themselves, they represented a necessary deception, he told the cadets. Today, they stand for something greater, the understanding that true peace comes not from ignoring the possibility of conflict, but from being prepared to face it together. The assembled cadets rose in unified respect, different species with different evolutionary histories now bound by a common purpose. The galaxy had learned what humanity had known all along, that sometimes the greatest strength lies not in what you display to the universe, but in what you keep in reserve, ready when needed most. Beyond the academy windows, the stars continued their eternal vigil, watching civilizations rise and fall. But for the first time in millennia, those civilizations were watching back, eyes open and prepared.